Ravens, today we're going to use our plot diagrams to start writing drafts of our stories, and we're going to try on a few different beginning options for our stories to see what works best for us. By the end of today's class, you should have 4 different beginnings of your narrative written in your notebook. Then you're going to pick one of those beginnings and keep drafting your story at least into the middle of the rising action. We'll be demonstrating this with a story about Sarah's experience babysitting when everything went wrong. So where are we going to start? We're going to start with the exposition, but the exposition on my plot diagram doesn't really name a specific event or place that it's happening. It's more background information about Sarah. And some of yours are like this also. You need to decide exactly what's happening when the story starts. I'm going to look at the inciting action when she goes to the job and start my story just a few minutes before she actually begins the job. I'm going to have her walking to the job with her mom. Also, because I'm planning to show some character change, I really want this first scene to set up the character's strengths, maybe, but also her flaws. Get an idea of what kind of a kid she is, because the flaws are the things that will get her in trouble. Sarah is very confident that this job is going to be easy because she's had so much experience babysitting her brother, and she's wanting to show how independent and mature she is. So, your plot diagram should be a good summary of the events in your story, but we don't want to write a summary. If we just added the plot events together, it would sound something like this. Boring. We want the story to unfold with inner thinking, action, dialogue, and description. I can start by showing you some inner thinking of Sarah. Here we go, Sarah thought. Finally, all those years of babysitting my baby brother are going to pay off. I'm working with just her thoughts, and I'm telling some of the things in the exposition that I want you to know by putting them in her head. I want you to pause the video and in your notebook, try and begin your story with some inner thinking of the character. Just write a couple sentences. When you're ready, resume the video. Another technique that's even easier is to start with a small action. Sarah waved goodbye to her mom and turned to face the neighbor's front door. Those are very specific, very small actions that she's doing. It lets you follow her body with the wave and then turning to the door and see exactly what's unfolding minute by minute. Putting her best responsible 12-year-old face, she knocked on the door. So we have just some very small moments. Try pausing the video and starting your story with some very small actions that main character takes. We're going through our iads, and after I and A is D for dialogue. You could start with a conversation between two characters. Remember, I'm here if you need me, my mother says for what seems like the millionth time. Toddlers are tough, you know, she said with a warning tone. They can really get into a lot of trouble. I shrug at her offer and think, how hard can it be? Now, if your character is alone in the beginning of their story, this won't be something you can do, but I still want you to look at it. What did I achieve by having this dialogue? One thing is I set up the fact that there's going to be, there's sort of foreshadowed the trouble with these kids. And since the mom's going to come back in the end and Sarah's actually going to need help, it makes a kind of a nice full circle ending, since I'm going to have the mom and her together having conversation at the end to start the story that way. So I'm going to ask you to pause and try and start your story with a couple lines of dialogue. When you're ready, resume the video. We're at our final D, description. I also could start my story with a lot of background information maybe some idea about what the setting looks like, sounds like, feels like, and other kind of backstory, maybe with some inner thinking also about what's going on, like this. Autumn leaves float through the air as I walk down the road with my mother, backpack in hand and stocked with DVDs, snacks, and a phone I can use in case of emergencies. I am ready to tackle my first solo babysitting gig. I've been in charge of my little brother ever since I could reach the phone on top of the kitchen counter, and now I am ready to take care of other kids and get paid for once. So this one has the most kind of backstory in it. I've also included some kind of setting information. And you'll also notice that I've switched the narrator to I, to first person. The first two examples, inner thinking and action, I was referring to the main character as Sarah, and the narrator was telling Sarah's story. In the dialogue and description versions, I used a first person narrator. I did this to show you two different things you could use. It's not okay to switch back and forth. You need to pick one and stick with it. You've probably written both ways. I want you to now pick whether you're going to write in third person, referring to names of characters and she and he, or whether you're going to tell the story in your character's voice and use the pronoun I. Go ahead and pause and write a descriptive lead, like the bottom one here, and when you're finished, resume the video. You should have 4 different ways of beginning your story, and you should have decided whether you're going to pick first person or third person narration. You're almost ready to continue drafting. You just need to decide whether you're going to write the story in past tense or present tense. Past tense is a more traditional storytelling technique. You say things like, remember, I'm here if you need me, my mother said happened in the past. And I shrugged at her offer. That happened in the past. Another way of telling the story is using present tense. It feels a little bit more like the story is happening right now. Remember, I'm here if you need me, my mother says. I shrug at her offer. You can do it either way, but whichever way you pick, you need to stick with through the whole story. Today you should decide first or third person, present or past tense. Which I-ad are you going to start with? Or are you going to do them all one right after the other? Keep going, write the inciting action, continue into the rising action, draft as much as you can in your notebook. I can't wait to read them.